Has Mary at ever point ever thought, I wish he'd get a proper job and we could just sort of live a 9 to 5 existence and watch Coronation
Yeah,
Street?
the only time we ever really fell out was around the time when the Cure toured with the Banshees the very first time in 1979, and when I was playing with them and playing with the Cure, and the reviews that were coming in and what I was getting sort of involved with, and I think Mary began to realise, as I did as well, that it was suddenly becoming very serious, not in a like a dun 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 sort of, but that I could actually do these things. I could just step in and play in a group like Susan the Banshees, who we'd been going to see and buying their records, and suddenly I was playing guitar, and it seemed really easy to me, and they accepted me, and I wasn't different in a strange way, because I could sort of step in and do something, and I think then we went through a period where she was, I suppose, she had a lot more prescience than I had. She realised what it might entail, and I was naturally very worried. I think probably because of the precedent set by what happens to most people, that unfortunately most people change, not always, well, very rarely for the better. That they are swamped, particularly by the attention that you get. I mean, even in like the most crass, unknown group, you get attention, from people who would otherwise not even cross the room to say hello to you. And I think she was sort of a bit nervous of that because we'd already been together for like 5 years then, and I think, I don't know, I suppose I wasn't that worried. Looking back, I can be like very, very blasé about it and think I wasn't worried because I knew that it wouldn't change me. But at the time, I must admit, it was a great attraction to get involved in something that had that, like you were being looked at and we were playing to people, and it was something that I just really wanted to do. And at the time, I remember one particular night in this park in Crawley, and I was saying to her, if I don't ever do this, it's like that I'll never be. I'll always, and she knew that anyway. She said, I know that you're going to say this. Like, if you don't do it, you'd always blame me that you didn't do it. So I said, well, why don't you just come along with me and we'll just see how it turns out. And that's really how it's gone on for that. And I feel very conscious of making things as normal as possible, which is probably why, because I do it not only for her sake but for mine as well, because that's actually what I want. I mean, I still go for walks at 3 a.m. at Beachy Head on a Monday. That's what I like doing, but at the same time I like the notion of the Cure playing at Dodger Stadium, and it's that. I mean, the balancing that's got far more difficult for particularly the past 3 years. But given the choice then, I dread to think if I'd been given the choice what I would have done. But now I know instinctively that I'd give all that side of it up and I'd go away and stay on Beachy Head. I mean, because I know that like deep down that's really, really what I'm like. But I wouldn't know that. If it's like when people are always, I don't know, I meet so many people that will say, oh, I wish that I'd, there's no such thing as wishing. It's like, if you've never tried, I've got no time for people that don't try, because all you can do is like not succeed, and it's, I don't know.
Do you worry about security, the future and that sort of thing?
No, I never have. It always sounds, it's a very, very difficult thing to talk about, really, because in the old days, I never worried about any side of that, material or spiritual or emotional. In fact, I shied away for a great part of the last 10 years from emotional security, and I've said all that about me and Mary. We are both very willful. The material side of that security, I mean, I've had more than I've needed for longer than I can think of, because I sounds dumb as well, I live very modestly and I don't actually want very much. I don't know, I don't really like things. Like if wherever I was living, in fact, like when we were doing the Disintegration album, that when I go away somewhere like to do an album, I take an awful lot of what I own with me. In fact, sort of 75% fits into like 4 quite big bags, and I just load it all into the back of the van and I take it with me, because I think, well, if I'm going to live in a studio for 10 weeks, it's 10 weeks of my life, I might as well have everything, like books that I like and videos and stuff and music that I like. I had a fire in my room in this residential studio 3 days after we got there, and it burnt down the whole wing of the house of this big house that I was staying in, and burnt everything. And I had to go in there with Dave Allen, who was producing us, and Perry, who's looking after us, who's now in the group, and we've got like wet towels and stuff. And all I had to save was my wallet had about 5 or 6 photos in that I didn't have negatives for of like of my family and of Mary, and I had the words to the album in a leather satchel, my school satchel, and I knew where I'd left it in the room. And we had to, and this was like, it sounds like very over dramatising, but it was. I mean, we got very told off by the police and the fire brigade when they arrived, 10 minutes later. But I knew that I had to save those 2 things, and luckily I knew where they both were, because like the photos were like on my bedside table, and the satchel was on the chair at the other end of the room, and we made this human chain with the whole group, and then me and Dave and Teddy stretched into the room with wet towels around us just to get it, because if I hadn't had the words, the album would have had to stop, and I think I would have burnt alive rather than that happened. It had taken me like 18 months to get enough words for me to be happy about doing an album like Disintegration. But the upside of it was that I realised that there was actually nothing else that I was worried about. Like the next morning, Paul was like almost in tears, more than I was, because he's going, "Oh, well, your clothes are burnt and like everything you had." And I was thinking that I genuinely don't feel upset about it, and it's really, in fact, it like let this whole weight off me, because up until then I'd often thought to myself, well, I'm probably lying about this to myself, that I do actually treasure all these things that I carry about with me, and I didn't at all. All I worried about was like that. I mean, the records that we made were obviously were already there, and that I had the words to make the next record and the photos, and that's what I always think about people who get so upset about when they lose things and stuff. It's like, I mean, unless you lose your mind, I think that's pretty irreplaceable. But and photographs, I think old photographs. But there's nothing else really that I treasure that much materially. So I don't really seem to need very much. I appreciate things that happen to me and people that happen to me far more than things. I mean, and in fact, the more the more security that I get with the Cure, the less I like it in a strange way. The more I try and not have it, and the more that we either give away or put money into projects that are, might work, but are like long-term things. And like we're probably going to set up a studio after all this time for the next record, just because it's going to cost an awful lot of money, and we've just made an awful lot of money. And what else? We either give it to ourselves, but it's I don't know. I was brought up, I suppose, to feel that there is a limit to how much you can own, also, and it's not really guilt. I had this conversation with someone the other day, and it's not a kind of guilt. But I feel that there's a moral obligation not to own too much. I think it's wrong to own too much. I really do, because there's too many people that don't own enough. It's but I obviously I appreciate. I would feel differently if I had children. I think just about the whole notion of security. I still live a life where I can literally just drop everything and go away. I just like grab Mary's hand and I can disappear, and I don't have to worry about anything. Not only because I haven't got children, but because I'm in a position where I'm able to do that. So in fact, I've reached a point where security has become meaningless in a way. If anything, it's something to react against, because security, I think, for most people is it's a kind of it's a wall that you build against change in a strange way. Not against like all change, but against changes in your immediate environment or your setup that you don't want to happen. And I don't really feel like that, because I welcome a kind of instability, I suppose, more than insecurity. And I try and I often like go to extreme lengths to introduce an area of instability in my life, so that I'll experience things. Because otherwise, I am also in a position where it's very easy to be cosseted all the time. I have to go out of my way to get places on my own. I think, how are you going to get there? And I say, well, I'll drive there. And I say, we can send someone for you. And I think, good grief, I'm 31. I've managed to get this far. I'll make it to the appointment tomorrow, sort of thing. And then I don't turn up.